Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the webinar, Thrive as a Data-Driven Educator, supported by Discovery Education. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Please let me know if at any time you are struggling to hear the audio come through your speakers. If you are having trouble, you probably aren't hearing me right now, but it could be that your speakers are muted. This is the first in a series of 3 webinars. The following webinars will take place on March 28th, Discovery Education Assessment, diving into detailed reports, where we'll look in depth at the Comparative Growth Report and the Innovative Item Summary. And then on April 4th, Discovery Education Assessment, getting into the Interactive Item Summary. Here we'll go way more in depth into the Interactive Item Summary, as well as taking a deeper look into the detailed export function, which we'll highlight today. There will also be a 3-week series that will follow in May. That one meant for more intermediate users of Discovery Education Assessment tools. You'll get lots of information today and at the webinars that will continue over the next 3 weeks, and we hope that it spurs you to do some exploring on your own. We'll talk a little bit about the Help tab today, and I definitely want everybody to know how to trace a path to that Help tab and to be aware of all of the materials there that can be of help. I'd like to introduce today's presenters. They are Amy Johnson of Discovery Education. Amy is the lead customer support specialist and has so much knowledge into so many of our reports, and she'll highlight the PDF teacher and PDF student reports today, as well as discussing the Help tab and the detail export functions. I also want to thank Max Brooks for being with us today. Max is also of Discovery Education, and he is an account manager for the Discovery Educator Network. And a little later in today's webinar, he'll discuss the Discovery Educator Network and give us some details into what that group is all about. And me, I'm Jason Altman. I'm an assessment account manager with the Discovery Educator Network, and I will be leading this webinar series, being an MC of sorts, where we bring in very talented individuals to talk about our reports and all of the things that we can get out of them. I'm in my 9th year in education and believe strongly in the tools we have at Discovery Education can be so meaningful to students and to teachers alike. The recording for this webinar will be available, and we will get that link to you very quickly on the day or 2 following this webinar. I want to encourage you to share it with your colleagues. Feel free to pass it on. We want this information to get as wide and as broad of an audience involved as we can. Perhaps it'll help us pull them into our 2nd webinar or our 3rd webinar that come up on March 28th or April 4th. Maybe it interests somebody in finding out more about the Discovery Educator Network, or encourages somebody to spend more time checking out the Help tab. You will be directed to a survey upon the completion of this webinar. Please take the time, if you have the time, 3 to 5 minutes is all, to spend some time on that survey, giving us your thoughts, helping us know how we can improve our webinars and how we can tailor them to meet your needs more effectively. After completion of the survey, a certificate of participation will be available to you. The link will pop up live following the survey completion, and you'll receive a certificate of participation that you can print out and use for any purpose that you would like. So as we get started with this webinar, I think it's important to talk about why we would want to log into discoveryeducation.com. Why we wouldn't want to just settle for the reports printed by somebody else and given to us. Many of us work in schools perhaps where our students take the test paper and pencil, and we have reports that are either shipped to us or are printed out for us. Reading these printouts that are made for you makes you a passive user of the data that your students have worked so hard to get to you. It takes away that ability to slice and dice your student data, to have your computer do some of the work for you, helping you sort your students into groups by the knowledge that they have and the knowledge that they need. Logging on to discoveryeducation.com will help you gain access to a tremendous amount of resources with little effort. One thing that you may not know is that Discovery Education Assessment is part of Discovery Communications, that same company that produces such great material on the Discovery Channel, on the Science Channel. As a partner of Discovery Education Assessment, you have access to many of these resources, some in as little as one click from some of our interactive reports. Because what we want to do most of all is make your job as an educator easier, to make that connection between your instruction and your student needs tighter. Because we hope that this webinar and the information presented here spurs a question for each piece of information that we may give you, I want to encourage you to use the chat window. Please use the chat window to type in your questions, to get them to me, the moderator. I'll be monitoring that chat window, and I will be collecting all of the questions for us to answer at key times during this webinar. Once we start sharing PowerPoints or go live to the web, you may lose your chat window and your participants list. It's still there. Look to the green box on the top of your screen. Click on that little green box and you'll see a chat button pop up. Click that box and your chat window will return. And with that, I will turn over my controls to Amy Johnson, and she will discuss the PDF teacher report.
If you see quite a bit of red in a particular skill, you can tell that the students need work in that area. If you scroll down to the student skill report, this basically is the information that aggregates up to the class summary that we saw up here. So, for example, on this report, you can see a list of all the students who've taken the test, the individual students' performance on each of the reporting categories, and their overall proficiency level for the subject. There's actually a couple of helpful ways to look at this report. Of course, you can look at it across this way to look at individual student performance, but you can also look at it down the individual reporting category columns to get a good sense of where the class as a whole is weak or may need improvement. You'll notice also that over here where we have the by subject proficiency, you can see from the legend up here which proficiency level that the students fall into. So in this case, we had 4 levels that made up this assessment. We had the below basic level, the basic, the proficient, and the advanced. And I know that a common question that we hear is, well, where are the cuts? How do I know how many more items the particular student would have needed to get correct to be, to move up to the next proficiency level? So the cut scores are shown here in parentheses. You can see that on this particular test B assessment, that below basic was 0 to 8. So this begins to inform how you can identify students who may be on the cut between 2 levels. Similarly, you can see, basic is between 9 and 16. So if you have a student who got 16 correct, for example, Lewis, you know that he's a student who's right on the border between 2 of those proficiency levels. And finally, the last column here, as we mentioned, shows us the number of items that the students got correct on the assessment. Depending on whether you pulled the grade pool or the teacher report, this may be a fairly lengthy report. We pulled the grade pool, so this is showing us all 78 students in the pool. So we're going to have, several pages of student information here. The next report that you'll have available within the PDF teacher is called the Student Subskill Report. And you may notice, or may have noticed in the past, that in parentheses here we have an A for Student Subskill Report A, and then down here we have a Student Subskill Report B. The reason for this is because although many of our tests are state-specific and are written to your particular state's standards, we also know that with many states moving toward Common Core, that teachers are interested in seeing how items correlate to the Common Core as well. So what we've done, even if we've written a state-specific test to Tennessee standards, for example, we would still go through those items, and as many of them as we are able to align additionally to a Common Core standard, we would do so. So you'll notice on the Student Subskill Report A that we have a label at the top of the page Common Core 2010. This shows you all of the items within this particular test that we were able to align to Common Core. And you can see the Common Core standards listed here. You can see the question numbers that were mapped to those Common Core, to the Common Core skill set. You can also see the state code, or in this case, just the code for the standards for each of those items. Additionally, you can see the item difficulty level. So you can see whether or not the item is considered easy. If it were easy, there would be an E there. If it's moderate, with an M, or if it's hard, with an H. You can also see what the correct answer is for the question, and then how the students performed on each of those questions. And you'll see the legend up here. So if it's colored in green, that means the student got that correct. And if there's an X, as in this case, the student did not answer the question. If it's gray and there's a letter in here, you can, other than what the correct answer is, you can see the incorrect answer that the student chose. And again, we have the number correct out to the side here, along with the percent correct. So this is why on the student subskill A, you may not see all of the items in the test. If you don't, that simply means that we were not able at this time to make an alignment for each item to the Common Core skill set. And then moving down to the subskill B, this shows you the primary skill set to which the test was aligned. So we're looking at a Tennessee school, so we see the Tennessee state reporting categories here. And we have, again, the different reporting categories that made up the test shown here: math process, number and operations, and so on. And again, we can see the questions that are within each of those reporting categories on the test. And the state code, we know that many of the teachers will be familiar with these particular codes that the state has assigned for different subskills, so that may be useful to the teachers. Again, we can see the item difficulty level, whether it's easy, moderate, or hard, the correct answer, the answer key, if you will, and then the student performance item by item. The next report that we have within PDF Teacher is the answers report. And this one has the answer key at the top. You'll see that that's shown in bold here. So these are the correct answers. And then you have the individual question numbers here. So this report is not separated by reporting category. It just has all of the items in one continuous list here as they are in the test, regardless of what reporting category that they're tied to. And so this helps you to see what the student responses were to the individual questions. Again, we have the legend here that shows the proficiency by subject along with the cut score, so you can tell what proficiency level the student is in and how many items they got correct. You also see their percent correct shown here, along with the state percentile and the scale score. The state percentile shows the student's rank in comparison to all students in the state who have taken that particular test. And the scale score is a 4-digit number that we use to track growth, student growth across multiple tests. Our vertical scale score is based off of what's called the Roche model of item response theory. And basically what that means is the student gets a score, a scale score based on their total number of items that they got correct and the difficulty level of those items. And again, you can use the scale score to measure growth within the school year. All of our tests are on the scale from 1,000 to 2,000. So every scale score that you see here will fall somewhere within the range of 1,000 to 2,000. And again, all of the tests are on the same scale, but based on the difficulty of the test, you'll typically have a higher scale score range. So for example, a 7th grade test would typically have a higher scale score range than a 3rd grade test. The last report that we have within PDF Teacher is called the Item Summary Report. And this just shows all of the questions that were on the test. You can see this in this column here that says Q number. That's indicating the item number. And then a column showing what the correct answer is. And then you can start to see within the class how the class performed on the item. So you can see the number of students in the class who got the item right, and the percent of students who got the item right, the number of students in the class who got the item wrong, and the percentage of students who got it wrong. And as we talked previously about having state-specific tests, but also an alignment to the Common Core, you'll notice that the item summary report, if it is a test that is state-specific, but that we also have done a Common Core alignment, you'll notice that there are two sections of this report. You have the Common Core section and the Tennessee section in this particular case because it's a Tennessee test. So you'll notice, for example, that item 41 doesn't have any Common Core skills filled in there, so that particular question we were not able to align to a Common Core standard. But because this is a Tennessee-specific test, all of the items should be aligned to a Tennessee standard. So you would always see the particular reporting category and subcategory shown in this section for the Tennessee side, but on the Common Core side, you would only see that same information if the item were mapped to a Common Core standard. And again, we show the difficulty level on this item, whether it's easy, moderate, or hard. And with the color coding that's shown on this report, you can begin to see where the class as a whole may need particular, reteaching of a skill. So, for example, and as it gets closer to the state test, this might be something you want to keep in mind. If at this point in the year you're seeing that the overall class performance on an easy item is low, if it's colored in red, that's a quick hitter that you could reteach with the students because it's should be a fairly easy skill for them to get. So if you just do a little bit more reteaching, maybe a little bit more practice with the probes, you can get the students to master that particular sub-skill before you take your state test. The item mastery isn't necessarily correlated to the color coding that you saw above with the blue, the green, the yellow, and the red. This is just strictly based off of the percentage of students who got the item right. So this could really be any three colors. We just chose to make it the red, yellow, and green to help quickly identify where the weak areas are. But basically this just means that if 0 to 39% of the students got the item correct, the row for that item will be colored red. If 40 to 60% got it correct, the row will be colored yellow, and if 61 to 100% got it correct, that row will be shown in green. And that's the last report that we have within PDF Teacher. Now we'll go through the PDF individual student. So back on the report page, you'll see the link here on the left for the PDF individual student. We'll go ahead and click that. And you can either pull up the reports for a whole class in the Select by Class section at the top of the page, or you can pick a particular grade and then choose one or more students within that grade. So if you just wanted to get a report for one student for a parent-teacher conference, it would be easier for you to come down here, select the grade, and then see the list of all the students in the grade and find the student that you wanted, as opposed to if you pull the report from up here, you'll get a PDF single sheet or possibly one or more sheets per student, one or more pages per student. So depending on how you want to pull that information, you may want to consider if you want to select it by class or by student. We'll go ahead and pull a report here. Just get my student here. All right, so I just want to get the report for Blackwell for the 3rd grade math. All right, so once the report comes up, you'll notice that it's grouped into 4 separate sections. You've got a growth box over here, the overall subject summary, the performance by standard, and then the answers down here. I like to start with the overall subject summary first, just so I can get a big picture of how the student is performing on the subject. You'll notice that whereas in the PDF teacher we pulled the report for a separate test period, so we either picked a test 1 or a test 2, depending if we wanted the A test or the B test. On the PDF individual student, all of the testing periods that the student has taken throughout the year are shown on this one report. So that's nice to be able to compare the student's growth and performance across multiple testing periods. So we can see that this is a 3rd grade math, and the available tests are the ABC, and we can tell from these columns here that the student has currently taken 2 tests, the A test and the B test. So the number correct, the number of items that the student got correct for each of the tests is shown. So we know that this student got 13 items correct on the first test and 17 on the second. And it also shows the total number of items that there were within each of those tests. And again, the student's performance, their percent correct on those tests. We also have the scale score that we talked about earlier. So that will be a number between 1,000 and 2,000. And here we have the color coding, which you can match up to this legend up here. So this student was the yellow color here for the first test, which is basic, and then moved up to the green color here, which is proficient, for the second test. We also have their state percentile, again showing their rank against all the students who took the same test within the state. And then the current subject proficiency shows the proficiency level that the student attained on the most recent test. So in this case, the most recent test that they have taken is the B test, and on the B test they were proficient, as we can see from the green coloring here. So the word proficient is shown here in the current subject proficiency. The national percentile is also available after the B test only. So you can use this to see how the student compared against other students in the nation. And finally, the state proficiency score and the state proficiency level, you'll notice this says unavailable for this student in particular, but there is a place within the bulk import when you're importing your students at the beginning of the year. There are some columns on that file for you to put in the student's performance on their state exam last year. So for example, in Tennessee, the TCAP, there are columns for you to put what the student's score was on the TCAP for that subject, you know, for math, for example, and what the student's level was on the TCAP, or whatever your state exam is. So if you load that information into the system when you import your students, you'll be able to see that information shown on the individual student report, the state proficiency score and the state proficiency level that they attained on last year's state exam. In the box on the left, you'll see a growth chart showing the comparison to the school and district. This is not currently available for every subject. For example, we don't currently have this for science. So if you ever see this empty, it's likely because we don't have a report for that particular subject. This report is based off of scale scores, and since we don't have scale scores for science at this time, that's why you wouldn't see any information here if it were a science test. We do have the scale scores for the reading and the math, so you can see from these points here that we're charting the student scale score over time. So we've got the 1348 shown by this triangle here on the first test, and then the 1390 shown here. So we've got a line showing the progress. And then we also have the comparison to the school and the district. These are the average scale scores for the district and the school on both of those tests as well. So you can see from this report how the student is performing in comparison to the school and the district. And you'll also notice this gray line here called the end of year target, and this shows the minimum score that the student would need to be considered proficient on the last test, and this is usually a range of about 10 scale points. So this information here helps you see how close or far the student may be from reaching the end of your target. You can also see the percentage of the district and the school that have completed the current test, which in this case is B. And this information is updated on a nightly basis. So for example, if you test today, then you could come in tomorrow and see how this percentage is continuing to increase to track when the school and the district will be completed with the current testing cycle. The section on the performance by standard summary shows all of the reporting categories that were covered on the test, and it shows you the testing periods. So we've got the test A and the test B and the student's color-coded performance on those reporting categories. You'll notice the legend in the upper right-hand corner showing the proficiency by skill, so you can see that the student was proficient on math process and number and operations on the A test, and she was basic on the A test, and then by the B test, she was proficient on those two skills. You also have the sub-skills that were tested within that reporting category for each of the tests, and just a very brief description of what that sub-skill was. And the test C is currently showing unavailable because this student has not taken the C test. Finally, at the bottom, we have the answers. So this test went from question 41 to question 72. And for each of the testing periods, we can see the student's performance on the test. If there's, and you can see by the legend here, if there's a green check mark, the student selected the correct answer. If the letter is shown here, that indicates that the student answered incorrectly, and the response that they chose is listed here. And if you see this shading here, it means the student did not answer the question. Unused, you'll see down here, the student hasn't taken this test, so this is just grayed out. But once the student has taken those items, you'll see the test C, or whatever the next test period is, filled in as well. And finally, we'll just look very briefly today at the detail export. We'll get further into that in a later webinar, but I just wanted to show you how to pull up that information and briefly talk about what the detail export is used for. So if you click the detail export link here, you'll see that you can select, you can either pull the detail export just for the teacher classes, just for the grade pool classes. This is within benchmark. You can also pull the export for progress zone. We'll just pull the benchmark data right now for the grade pool. And you can select the subject that you want. We'll go ahead with math. You can leave all of the grades checked if you want to see everything. We only were looking at third grade before, so I'll just deselect all of the other grades. And then if you've loaded in your students' demographic information, gender, ethnicity, economically disadvantaged, and so on, if you mark include subgroup fields, any demographic information that's been loaded into the system would be available in this report. And you can pull this in either a CSV or an XLF format. Just click Export Excel. Click OK, and then you have your spreadsheet that opens up, and of course there are a lot of columns on this that we'll go in more detail with later, but the key thing to remember on this is just a great way to handily get all of your information in one place. So you can see, for example, in this test key column that we have an A test and we have a B test, so I can pull multiple test periods of data. And then with Excel, I have a lot of flexibility to sort information by student, by proficiency level, by demographics, number correct, and so on. So there are just a lot of ways that you can slice and dice your data in Excel. And I know that some of our customers like to use this information to inform reports that they may submit to the district or to the state, or loading in information for data warehouse purposes. So there's just a lot of flexibility that you have with the information that's in the detail export. And Jason, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Amy. And just a reminder to everybody to, right now, if you have any questions, maybe even practical use of any of these reports, please give us those questions, ask us those questions through the chat window right now. We're going to have a question and answer session coming up right at this time. Now, we'll just give everybody 30, 45 more seconds. And we've got one question already from the chat window, and I just encourage everybody to ask us anything that they might want to know. This is your time. Okay, so we'll go forward here with these two questions. Looks like we have another one here. Thank you very much, Max and Rhonda and Teresa, for your questions. Our first question, Amy, let me know if you want to go ahead and take this one and answer this one, is what would make a question not be aligned to the Common Core?
That's a good question. And I can talk about it briefly. I know that in terms of the alignment itself, that's something that our content team does when they are writing the tests. And, you know, currently many of our tests are state-specific, and so what we've also done is loaded in the Common Core standards. And so with the state standards, we write the questions very specifically to whatever that state standard is. So there may be, you know, an item that we wrote specifically for Florida based on a Florida sub-skill, and that simply isn't something that's tested in the Common Core because it's very specific to Florida. So what we've attempted to do within the state-specific tests is make sure that every single item is written to the state's standards, and then any item that we can also, you know, dually align to a Common Core standard, we will do so. But given the, you know, very specific way that a state may test something, it may not lend itself to a Common Core standard. However, we do also have Common Core tests, purely Common Core, not state-specific, within grades 3 through 8. So if you're interested only in a Common Core test, you know, with no state specificity, you do have the ability online to take those Common Core assessments. And those, of course, would be entirely aligned to Common Core.
Thanks so much, Amy. And if there's any follow-up questions that come out of that answer, please include them in the chat box. Another question is, do teachers have access to the detail export feature? Go ahead, Amy.
They do within their classes. Of course, as the site administrator, you would see all of the classes for the school. And as an account administrator or district administrator, you could see all of the classes within the district. The teacher does have access to the detail export, just only for their classes.
All right. Thank you so much, Amy. Okay, we are going to move on. I'm quickly just going to talk a little bit about something that a lot of educators don't even realize is available to them and available to parents, to their colleagues who may be in schools that don't partner with Discovery Education, and available to students. And that is a bunch of resources that are available to you pre-login. So a lot of times as we get things set up on our Google Chrome or whatever browser we might use, you know, our browser remembers our password, it remembers our login, it always logs us right in. Once we're logged in, we lose access to a whole ton of resources that are available to us, that are available only pre-login, and they're available to everybody. And I just quickly want to highlight here, you'll notice we have administrators, teachers, parents, students, and some information about Discovery Education. Through the Parents tab, you can see some things that would be very helpful for parents as they try to help and support their students in your classrooms. One that's always been very interesting to me is in the Motivation Station. There's a number of different articles and ideas for educators to be able to use, or for parents to be able to use to support their students as they, go through this journey with us in our classrooms during the year. And so just an example there of something that's available to our parents. Also, available to our students are a number of different things: homework help, web math, featured programs, things like that. And we'll just quickly click down on a math homework help so you can see some of the things that would be available to students as they would be able to log on. And our students can go to discoveryeducation.com just like we can and access these resources without logging on, without even having a login code. And here's some of the information that would be available to those students as well as web resources, web math. We'll quickly just click there. You can see some of the information that would be available to students. So I'm having trouble with counting coins. I want to see just a little more information about that. And we've got some information here, a resource for students to have help in helping them count coins. And then even more importantly, we are going to go back to our main pre-login page. We have a ton of information for you teachers. Just to show you a few different things. So not only do we have some lesson plans, some resources that are sorted for us by the grades that we might teach, some resources that are sorted for us by the content areas and subjects we might teach. We've also got some puzzle makers, featured programs, and some additional information. So we're going to take a look just quickly. We're going to go through and just see what we have available to us as far as lesson plans might go. We've got a lesson plan library that has just a ton of free lesson plans that are really worked out well for us. And they're divided up in ways where we can sift through things and not have to look through all of the lesson plans and see just the ones that might be appropriate to us. If we teach 6 through 8 and we teach in mathematics or science, we can isolate those content areas and those grade levels. And we've got our featured lesson plans as well. We'll just click on this, the principles of encryption. This one is meant for a 9 through 12 classroom. And just to kind of give you a little look at how the lesson plans look and how you might be able to incorporate them into your classroom. This would be a science 9 through 12 lesson. We've got our overview, our objectives, our standards, the time frame, and some background and vocab. And then we've got our activities. And everything's laid out for us, including the links, things that we would want to be able to see. I just got a note that we have some people that might not be able to hear me. I just want to quick somebody chat if you can hear me and everything is going fine. Looks like we're a little behind on as I've gone live to the site. And right now you guys are seeing the web math. Sorry about that. Just about 35 or 40 seconds behind, it seems. So right now, as we get there, hopefully everybody's able to get into the lesson plan that I'm showing on my computer right now. Okay. I'll just slow down a little bit with my movements on the computer to help it match what I'm talking about right now. So we've got some links to resources in these lesson plans, and then we've got things laid out to us by the 5E model: engage and explore, explain, extend, and evaluate. We've got some evaluation ideas, and then we've got multiple days or multiple session types of lessons that are available as well. So just something that we want you to know is available to you. I'm going to slow down just a little bit here. Hopefully everybody comes back to the main login page. Another thing that I just have to show you is our Puzzle Maker. I have a lot of fun with this one. As we click on Puzzle Maker, you'll see that we have a lot of different things that we can make. Word cross, it's kind of like a word find, a word search, a crisscross, double puzzles, and some of these others. So spend some time coming out of this webinar just going on to Puzzle Maker and seeing if there's anything that might be useful for you. One that I like is the crisscross, and it's just so simple to use. Hopefully you can kind of follow along with me. I'm going to make a quick crisscross just while we operate here live. So let's say my favorite fruits. And I enter my words, and I enter the clues. It looks like for some I'm back at lesson plan. I'm very sorry for that. And we'll create our puzzle. And quickly I've got a crossword puzzle. Maybe a great way for my students to be able to do some vocab work before we go in, before we start a lesson, where it's going to be vital that they have some very basic and simple understanding of some very key vocabulary terms. Okay, I am going to pass the ball back over to Amy. Amy's going to take us on a quick tour of the Help tab. Coming out of this webinar, we understand that you may end up having more questions than answers. We have several more webinars that are set up to help you answer some of those questions, plus some other tools that I'm working on right now. But one way that there is an answer to many, many of those questions is to go to the Help tab. Go ahead, Amy.
Okay. I'm sharing my desktop again, so you should see here, well, we'll go back to assessment where we were a minute ago. We were on the reports page, and you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner of the page that I have profile, help, and logout. So the help tab is located under the help link. So if you go ahead and click help here, you'll see on the left-hand side of the page that all of the Discovery products are shown: streaming, science, textbook, science, and so on. And one of the available links is DE assessment. If you click this, it will expand to show you a number of subcategories underneath. One that I like is the Getting Started. This has a number of tutorials that we have created for common website procedures, such as creating classes, starting a benchmark, editing student information, and so on, in addition to several tutorials related to Progress Zone. So if you have a question about navigating the site or Progress Zone or administering benchmarks and so on, check the Getting Started for these tutorials. I also like to show up to 50 items on a page. It just makes it a little easier to see everything that's available. There also are calendars available. So you may have a question about, well, what is the recommended window for taking tests for my state, or taking the early skills assessment or the college readiness assessment? And you can see these calendars here that are available for download with those recommended windows. We also have a section with frequently asked questions. So if you do have any questions that you want to check on the FAQs to see if they're available, check this out. There's some general questions, and then questions specifically for online testing and paper testing. And also our contact information is shown here for assessment customer support, with the toll-free number and our email address if you wish to contact us that way. We also have some more specific information about testing on paper, testing online, and then we have several user guides that are available. We have the Progress Zone assessment, RTI, an overview of the early skills assessment. That's our K through 2 benchmark product, along with indicator user guide. Some information about the reports that may be useful to you. And also we talked about the cut scores shown on the reports to see where the cutoffs are for each of the proficiency levels. That information can be found within this proficiency tables section. So if you want a comprehensive look at all of the cut scores for each test period throughout the year, you'll see that here, including the number correct, the corresponding scale score, and the overall proficiency level. And then we have links to the previous year's, 2 previous years worth of data. So if you need to know where to go to access last year's reports or the year before, there are links to that information as well. And then finally, we have tables here for some of the states where we have the full year's growth information. So if you want to see what constitutes a full year's growth within a state or for the early skills assessment, there may be a document here available with that information. And then finally, we have the information for benchmark, progress zone, RTI, and indicator grouped separately. So if you're having a hard time finding it in getting started, for example, or in user guides, you can look in the specific area of the site that you're looking for information for. So there's a lot of helpful information here at your fingertips. Jason, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Amy. And I'm actually going to turn things over to my friend and buddy, Max Brooks, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the Discovery Educator Network. As you may come out of this, this webinar with some interest in finding out more information about what things people are doing with Discovery Education, Max Brooks has an answer for you. And Max, are you there on the audio?
Hello, Jason.
Yep, we can hear you, Max.
Hello, hello.
Yep.
Okay, I wasn't sure you could hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you, Max.
Great. How's everybody doing out there? I'm pretty sure that if you're tuned into this webinar, that you're aware that Discovery Education is one of the best resources for promoting learning, especially learning with technology and learning with digital resources. And so if you're wondering that how you go about after today doing more with what you learned, I wanted to share with you some resources really quickly. Jason, have you passed me the ball already?
Yep,
where people can see my screen?
Be able to go live.
Okay, great. I just wanted to share with you some things that you can use going forward. And the best resource that I can vouch for is the Discovery Educator Network. The Discovery Educator Network is a great group of people, and they're all committed to these ideas of teaching with digital media, sharing resources, and definitely collaborating and networking with one another. It's not some ethereal make-believe group. These are actually live, flesh and blood people who get together as often as they can, whether it's at our Summer Institute, as you can see in the picture that I have on the screen, or also in local events that are taking place all over the country.
I'm going to stop you, Max. I think that your screen may not be shared with everybody right now. I'm not receiving it, so maybe more than just me.
Okay, let me jump back. See community. Let's see how are we doing there.
Yep.
We're good?
We're good. Yep.
Okay. Great. Well, just to reiterate, I was talking about the Discovery Educator Network and how, after today, people are able to connect with a community that can help them go further with using digital resources. And as I was saying, there's events happening all the time in your area, whether it's a virtual event like the one that we're participating in now, or an in-person event that may be organized by the leadership councils in your area. But as you can see from this Wordle diagram, this word cloud, some of the things that educators in this community have, some words they've used to describe the community are collaborative, inspiring, engaging, innovative, awesome, and definitely informative and educational, amongst other things. So you can be sure that by being a part of the Discovery Educator Network, or even going a little further to become a Discovery Educator Network star, a DEN star, you'll be amongst good company of people who are all about teaching and learning with digital technology. So in terms of finding out where you fit in or how to become a star, you may be in one of these categories. Maybe you are one of the people who, yeah, you know, you'll tune into a webinar now and again, but you're still kind of a little put off by technology. Just it seems kind of overwhelming. You might be a little scared of it. You don't know what QR codes are. You think, you know, what is that? I don't know. I can I can mind my P's and Q's, but I don't know about these QR codes. Or maybe you're a person that wants to learn more, and you're kind of in the middle. Or maybe you're way out there already a star, and you just embrace every little piece of technology. Wherever you fit, we have a place for you in our community. We have people who have become technology evangelists who went from being technophobes. We have people who've embraced technology from the get-go, and they continue to promote the use of technology. But at the same time, we also know that it can be overwhelming in terms of trying to keep up with everything that's out there. If you want, in the chat window, you can go ahead and tell me yes or no if you recognize all these different tools that you see here on this one little slide here. But the reality is most of us probably do not, because it's hard to keep up with all of those. And so we don't expect you to spend all your time looking for these different tools. Like, not everybody can be an expert in Glogster and Prezi and VoiceThread and the like. But if you're spending all this time trying to find these resources and keep up with all of them, it might just happen that you would lose focus of the people that are the most important. And as we heard today, we have tools like assessment that allow you to really drill down and find out what's going on with your students. And we want you to make sure you keep that focus and don't lose that focus. And the Discovery Educator Network is a great community to help keep you grounded as you continue in your educational career. So just know that there's a place for you. We encourage you to attend any of our DEN events that are happening in person. You can find out about what's going on in your area by going to denblogs.com. You can also visit blogs.discoveryeducation.com and tune into what's happening in your area. We also have virtual events that you can keep track of by tuning into webinars.discoveryeducation.com or discoveryeducation.com/webinars. Either one of those will give you our calendarized list of virtual events that are happening all the time. And we will keep you connected with relevant content, such as, you know, when 9/11 happened, the 10-year anniversary, we had theme pages that had relevant, timely content right there for you to use in the classroom. I know that there's some other things coming through the pipeline in terms of the anniversary of the Japan earthquake, and there's resource and discovery that you can use in your classroom there as well. But don't take our word for it. You know, there's this little school up north you may have heard of, I think it's called Harvard. They actually did a study and found out that, in fact, this community does make a difference, and the evidence is there. And we encourage all of you all to join our team, join the Discovery Educator Network, become a star, get involved, and if you're ready to do that, when you log into Discovery Education, just click on where it says DEN. It's right there near the assessment button, and once you do that, you'll see a little place that says Become a Star, Discovery Educator, find out how. Click on that star, get involved. We look forward to seeing you in our community. And with that, Jason, I'd like to pass it on back to you.
Thanks so much, Max. And let's see, looks like we need to return to mine. All right. And let's just see here. Okay. And we're just going to finish up here quick with answering our final questions and some information to help you get out the door today, knowing that you have a chance to come back. And the first question that came through was these health categories, are they limited by what products our district has purchased? And Amy, do you want to tackle that one?
Are the help categories limited based on what you purchase?
Yeah.
No, they should not be. You should be able to see all of the products when you go into help.
All right. Thank you very much. And then Max, I'll throw this one over to you. It's I think maybe more of a yes, no, and quick go look here question, but I want to have my kids be history reporters and green screen them into video clips. Are there products available to help with that?
So there's lots of resources out there for doing green screening. One of our favorites that was web-based was called JCut. Unfortunately, BlackBerry decided to, I think, purchase it, and they haven't come out with an alternative. But with tools like Movie Maker or with Photo Booth, even on the Mac computer, or iMovie, there's some Adobe video editing tools that are out there, you can do green screening with your students. So if you record them with a green background, you're able to then take the videos and pull that in. And what I suggest is that if you go into Discovery Education streaming and you do a search for green screening, we actually have some tutorials that have been placed in there by some of our Discovery Education stars with walkthroughs and step-by-steps on how you can go about doing some green screening with your videos. We also have professional development trainers from Discovery Education who, if you'd like, you can have your district or school level people give us a call and we can come out there and do full-on trainings on how to do some green screening and really take it to the next level in terms of reaching and meeting the goals that you have with for your students.
All right, thank you so much, Max. And thank you so much for everybody's participation. We had an active chat window and that was great, and we're looking forward to our next webinar in this series. Please join us next Wednesday, same time. Discovery Education Assessment, diving into detailed reports will be the topic there, where we'll investigate our comparative growth reports and our interactive item summary. Just a reminder that following this end of this webinar, there'll be a short 3 to 5 minute survey for you to be able to complete, and then after that, the link for your participation certificate will be made available to you. If you don't have time right now, and we certainly understand that, just quick write down this link, links.discoveryeducation.com, 032112 webinar survey. Gets you to that survey and eventually gets you to your certificate of participation. And thank you so much to everybody for participating, and we will talk to you and talk with you next Wednesday. Just a reminder that your registration for that webinar is under the same link that you followed to register for this. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll talk to you next week, next Wednesday. Thank you. Bye.